You pay in cash, the cashier moves straight into bagging your items or greeting the next customer, and your change never actually lands in your hand. Here is exactly what to say in that exact moment before you take a single step away from the counter. Say calmly, "Excuse me, I believe I am still owed my change from that." That is the whole tool. Let me show you why this exact moment matters so much and why it happens far more often than most people realize. Why does this happen in the first place? Consumer attorneys who handle these disputes say it is rarely intentional. A cashier finishes a transaction, the register displays the amount owed back to you, and in a busy moment, between bagging groceries, answering a question, or simply moving fast through a long line, handing over that change becomes the one step that quietly gets skipped. It is not usually a decision, it is a distraction. And distractions are exactly what a calm, immediate reminder fixes. Here is the part that matters most: timing. The moment you are still standing at the register, the drawer is still open, the transaction is still fresh on the screen, and correcting this takes seconds. The moment you walk even a few steps away, especially if another customer has already stepped up to the counter, the situation becomes noticeably harder. Not because you are wrong, but because there is no longer a clear, immediate moment to point back to. So picture the actual exchange. You hand over cash, the cashier taps the register, bags your first item, and turns toward the next task without ever placing change in your hand. You say, calmly, "Excuse me, I believe I am still owed my change from that." 9 times out of 10, this gets an immediate apology and the correct change handed over within seconds, since the register itself is usually still showing the exact amount owed. What if the cashier seems confused or insists they already gave it to you? This happens sometimes, and staying calm here matters even more than the first ask. Point calmly to the register screen if it is visible, since most registers display the change due for several seconds after a cash transaction, sometimes longer if the drawer has not yet been closed. If the screen has already cleared, ask if the drawer can be checked against the receipt total, since the transaction record itself will confirm exactly how much change should have been given. There is a version of this worth naming directly: the assumed tip. Occasionally, a cashier will place your change directly into a visible tip jar near the register without asking first, assuming you meant to leave it. This is different from a genuine mistake, and it deserves a slightly different response. If you notice this happening, or notice it just after, a calm, direct question works well here too. "Oh, I was actually planning to take that change. Could I have it back?" Most tip jars are exactly that, voluntary, and a cashier redirecting your change into one without asking first is not something you need to feel awkward about correcting. Self-checkout creates its own version of this same problem, and it is worth covering specifically since there is no cashier to remind at all. If a self-checkout machine fails to dispense your change, whether it jams, runs low on coins, or simply glitches, do not walk away first. Look for the attendant stationed nearby, or press the help button directly on the machine and calmly explain the amount still owed while you are standing at that exact machine. These machines keep detailed transaction logs, and an attendant can usually verify and correct this within a minute or two if you catch it before leaving the self-checkout area entirely. This same situation shows up in a slightly different shape at drive-through windows, worth naming since the setting makes it easy to miss entirely. Change is often handed through the window quickly while you are also managing a bag of food, a drink, and a car in gear, and it is genuinely easy to pull forward before realizing nothing was handed to you at all. If you notice while still at the window, the same calm line works. "Excuse me, I believe I am still owed my change." If you have already pulled away and only notice a moment later, most locations are part of a larger chain with a manager on site or a customer service line, and a quick call describing your order and roughly when it happened is worth those few minutes, particularly if it becomes a repeated pattern at the same location. Restaurants create yet another version of this same moment, often at the very end of a meal when everyone is gathering coats and bags and getting ready to leave. A server may return with change on a small tray, set it down, and get pulled away to another table before you have actually picked it up. Or in some cases, the change may simply never make it back to the table at all if the server assumes it was meant as a tip without ever asking. The same calm approach applies here too. A brief, polite question to the server or host on your way out. "I believe there was change still due from my payment," resolves this quickly in the vast majority of cases, since restaurants generally want to avoid ending a meal on an unresolved note just as much as you do. Here is something worth understanding about why catching this immediately matters so much more than it might seem to. Once you leave a store, there is genuinely very little a business can do to verify what happened at the register after the fact. There is no receipt for change that was never given, no record beyond the register's own log, and no independent way to confirm your version of events against theirs. This is not a flaw in the system working against you. It simply means the fix has to happen in that same moment, at that same counter, while the details are still fresh and verifiable for everyone involved. If you do realize only after leaving the store, once you are already in the car or at home, the situation becomes harder, but is not entirely hopeless. Attorneys who handle these disputes recommend calling or returning to the store as soon as possible, with your receipt if you kept it, and calmly explaining the amount you paid, the amount of change that should have been due, and that you do not recall receiving it. Some stores can review video footage from the register area or check whether the drawer balanced correctly at the end of that shift, particularly if you can narrow down roughly when the transaction happened. This is not about assuming every cashier or server who forgets is trying to keep something that is not theirs. Most of the time, this is simple human distraction in a fast-moving job. Nothing more calculated than that. Recognizing it that way, rather than as an accusation waiting to happen, is exactly what keeps the calm, cooperative tone that resolves this so quickly in the first place. If you are shopping with a spouse or a family member, it is worth building the small habit of glancing at each other's hands right as you both step away from a counter, especially if one of you is managing bags, a cart, or young grandchildren at the same time. A second set of eyes catches a missed handoff far more reliably than either person alone, particularly in a hurried or crowded moment. If you are watching this from somewhere in Europe, the underlying principle holds just as strongly, regardless of currency or country. A calm, immediate reminder, while still standing at the register, resolves the vast majority of these situations, since it relies on simple human attentiveness and a fresh transaction record, not on any specific law that varies from place to place. It is worth knowing what to do if this happens more than once at the same store, since a single missed handoff and a repeated pattern deserve genuinely different responses. One missed handoff, corrected calmly, is worth forgetting about entirely once it is resolved. But if it happens more than once at the same location, it is worth keeping a brief note, the date, the amount, and how it was resolved, since a documented pattern is exactly what a store manager or corporate customer service line takes seriously, far more seriously than a single unsupported complaint. There is a simple habit worth building that prevents most of this from ever happening in the first place. Pausing for just a moment at the register, watching the transaction complete and your change actually leave the cashier's hand before turning away takes only a second or two longer than rushing straight into bagging your items. That small pause is often the entire difference between a smooth transaction and standing there minutes later, patting your pockets, wondering where your change went. There is a quiet confidence in simply knowing the right words for this exact moment, and that confidence changes how the interaction unfolds. Saying, "Excuse me, I believe I am still owed my change from that," calmly and without hesitation, signals that you expect a normal, cooperative correction, not a confrontation. And cashiers overwhelmingly respond in kind when that is the tone they are met with. A calm tone, said promptly, tends to matter more to the outcome than the exact wording ever does. Think about how many cash transactions happen across an ordinary month: groceries, a coffee run, a stop at the pharmacy. Most of them end exactly as they should, change handed over without a second thought given to it. But the rare moment it slips through the cracks is never predictable in advance. And having one calm sentence ready, said the moment you notice, before you take even one step away, removes almost all of the awkwardness that normally makes people either say nothing at all or feel embarrassed asking. If this helped you feel a little more prepared, consider subscribing, because this channel exists to walk through exactly these kinds of everyday moments so you always know what to say before you need it. This video is for general education only and is not personalized legal advice for your specific situation. And if you found this useful, you will also want to watch the earlier video on what to do if a cashier gives you less change than you are actually owed, because it covers a closely related moment where staying at the register just a few extra seconds makes all the difference in how easily it gets resolved.